On the couch together with Lately in Land and Housing, as you know, is your weekly show that focuses on current affairs in political landscape pertaining to housing, evictions, equitable access to land, tenure security. Today, we will discuss Tafelberg site story and an overall promise of social housing. Assalamu alaikum and good evening. I'm Farida Rabia in Soki and Zinzi, and this is On the Couch, where you hear the difference on 100.4 FM. Today, we are diving into a pressing issue that has been haunting our society, the disregard for our constitution by government officials and the often overlooked suffering of the poor and working class. A few weeks ago, we had a conversation with the Women's Legal Center regarding COIDA amendments aimed at providing protection for domestic workers. For far too long, the government has turned a blind eye to exploitation of domestic workers, benefiting from what some might call cheap labor. But what's often hidden beneath the surface is the profound and great impact this has on the lives of those on the receiving end. To help us unpack this issue further, we have two special guests. We have Isa Jacobson, C Point for All, and Megan Boboyane, C Point chapter leader, and Reclaim the City. Welcome and good evening to On the Couch.
Thank you. My name is Isa. And,
sorry.
No, that's absolutely fine. So just to clarify, C Point for All was started pretty much around Tafelberg time in order to have a residents' association that supported social housing on the site. And subsequently, we've evolved into a YIMBY movement, which is Yes in My Backyard. And that is to also support inclusionary housing in the area. So Tafelberg is still waiting to be inhabited. I mean, that's the crazy thing. It's been empty, I think, since 2011. The school that was there moved out its students in 2010. And so there was a process. And since then, there have been pretty much security guards staying there. The last time we looked at how much this was costing, it was about 50,000 Rand a month. So we need to start adding that up and starting to figure out how much wastage there's been on this in this empty school.
And Megan, if you would like to jump in, just explaining why the story of Tafelberg is so significant in this context.
All right, so thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that question. So the Tafelberg story is crucial because it highlights the 7-year-long struggle even longer than that, of the poor and working class people calling for social housing on the Tafelberg site. And as you mentioned, domestic workers struggles to make ends meet, making it impossible for them to live closer to their workplaces. And even if they do, their living conditions are often so low graded. I mean, they are still being separated from their families and children, having their children live far from them. There's so many other injustices that are still happening even till this day in 2023.
So seeing that it's 7 years and it's actually a little longer than that, people like yourselves, how are we working to sort of change that?
Okay, and so Reclaim the City is all about that. So we are for the people, and we want inclusive housing within the inner city and well-located land. And so what we are doing about it is we're putting out the call to Ellen Wendy. I mean, as we speak today, we're currently at the first Thursday in Kraaifontein, and we're just here to say, like, promises have been made, Ellen. You guys said once we won the Tafelberg matter, you had made promises that social housing would be built on this side, and yet 7 years later we're still not seeing a difference. There's nothing happening in this on this land. Instead, you've marked it as a heritage site, a heritage of your children. But what about the domestic workers of Sea Point? Are they not part of the heritage of Sea Point? Are they not part of what Sea Point was built on? And we can take it back as far as Tramway. I mean, the first residents that lived there were the working class. The first residents that built Sea Point were the working class. But now today, it seems like they are the most unwelcome people there. And so, when the government makes promises to say, okay, fine, we'll stop the sale of Tafelberg, and yes, we can build social housing on there, but yet we're still sitting here and still nothing has been done. I mean, the judgment was passed on the 31st of 2020. It's almost 3 years later. What have you done? What has the city of Cape Town done to improve or to even show development on the site of Tafelberg?
0786 10 11 12 for all your questions and concerns. So the living conditions is a pressing concern, and perhaps you might shed some light on whether there have been any changes in the body corporate rules for domestic workers since the dawn of this great democracy that we are struggling to thrive in, Isa.
Yeah, I think, look, it is a very interesting question, but there's one thing, the actual designated servants' quarters where people are supposed to be living. But you actually have a situation now where people are having to live in storerooms because that is the only affordable accommodation. And that's not for human habitation. It doesn't have the ventilation it needs. There are no bathrooms. There are all those issues that come along with that. So on the one hand, you have these servants' quarters from old apartheid era where people actually are able to live. But I have not seen much change in the body corporate rules that I've witnessed. And what happens there is that you have to, all of the flats are designated a place where a servant can live, a maid can live, in inverted commas. And so nobody else can have access to that very precious form of accommodation, and it's become like that. It's become incredibly valuable, and it certainly is something it's very much sought after. But you still have the owner of the flat deciding who can and can't live there, and that is problematic because it's not free, it's not fair, it's not sort of on an equitable basis.
Would you say that the owner is supposed to have like this guideline as to choose who lives there, or is he told who is supposed to live there?
Well, that person needs to work for them, pretty much, as far as I can gather. Most of the blocks work like that. If you are discovered as an owner to be renting out that room to somebody who doesn't work for you, that's also hugely problematic. So, yeah. So
does the owner then get fined for that? Or because I'm just trying to understand how it's supposed to work, how we're supposed to understand it. So I work for this person, and I have the right to live in this flat because it's closer to work. I don't have to travel. It's easy access and all of that. Do I live in this flat with my family, or is it just myself?
Flat is generous. I mean, we're talking.
The space.
It's a space that's really only set up for one person, and it was never set up for a family. So no, it still isn't. It was just part of the destruction of family life, that existed under apartheid, that has been allowed to continue. Whether people break the rules, whether one body corporate will allow some things to happen that another body corporate in another block of flats won't allow, that's very hard to assess. It's probably not a one-size-fits-all situation. And I'm sure some people choose to turn a blind eye.
Yeah, because you just said storeroom. It's like basically like a box that one.
Well, there are two. They're the old existing maids' quarters, which were built for human habitation, but for, one person to live in. And then at the bottom, then those are usually above, like at the very top, as far as I can gather. And at the bottom are the storerooms. And those storerooms have been taken, are now being rented out as living accommodation. And that's when I said that's actually was never meant for human habitation. So if you can kind of understand the difference.
Yeah. Megan, if you'd like to come in there.
So I was just going to say, so it's not one size fits all, because I mean, like in the time that I lived in Sea Point, I was renting one. So I was never a domestic worker, but I was renting in one of the maid quarters there. And I think some of the thinking around it is also, if you work for somebody that you stay in these storerooms or in these maid quarters for, it's easy to kind of discipline you in a way. So, I mean, you'd always have the fear of losing your job should you bring somebody external to come and sleep over, even if it's for one night, and may get into trouble. So the thinking around that is also, it's easier disciplined in some of these flats or blocks of flats if they only allow the people that work for them to stay there. So they can't get somebody else from outside who doesn't really have a fear of losing their job type of a thing, because they might not follow the rules or the protocols of that govern that flat.
Wow, 27 years, 29 years of democracy. Is that what we're doing? That doesn't sound much of freedom. It doesn't, yeah.
Not at all. The mere fact that people, I mean, you're earning a salary that's less than 5,000 Rand, and you're expected to come from Khayelitsha to Cape Town via taxi, which is half of your salary already gone. And that's, 27 years into democracy, we're still having those kind of problems. So spatial injustice is still one of the things that's never even been addressed, according to my understanding.
You wanted to come in, Asa?
I mean, there has been no affordable housing that has been built in the inner city and its surrounds since 1994. So, really, this is one small aspect that people are having to rent these rooms. But really what we should be doing and focusing on as a society is creating affordable housing that is fit for human habitation, and more than human habitation, families to live in, that are close to the center of the city. And what also I find just horrific is the fact that a lot of the schools in Sea Point are, if you take Sea Point High, for instance, a lot of the kids are coming in from Khayelitsha. So they're traveling that 35 kilometers. Their parents don't deem their own schools to be good enough, and they're trying their hardest to give them access to schools in the inner city. And a lot of the white people in the area are not sending their own kids there. So, those children, I see them on, when I'm driving along High Level Road, they're hitchhiking into town to get their taxis back. They're trying to obviously save as much money as they can by hitchhiking in and out of town. It's so dangerous for a lot of these young teenage girls who are apparently being groomed by taxi drivers who have no safe space to be. So we're dealing with a bunch of problems there. Can you imagine if those kids could actually live in the area and walk a few blocks to school?
0786 10 11 12 is the number that you can send all your questions and comments to. This is Radio 786 on 100.4 FM. We continue the conversation right after the break. On the Couch, where you hear the difference on 100.4 FM. We are speaking about Tafelberg and the overall promise of social housing. I have different images in my mind of the people that live that side, that commute to that side of the world, and the challenges these people might have, and also an image of a storeroom where a person was required to live in. Before the break, Isa was speaking to us about some of the challenges of the children who go to live in a different area, who go to school on that side because their parents believe that the schools in Sea Point are much better, offer more opportunities versus the schools in the community, and the struggles that these young people are facing. And this all under the theme of not having houses available for people to live closer to access and opportunities. Now, Megan, do you think you're going to get an opportunity to speak to the very important people this evening?
Yes, I mean, there's not a lot of people here today, so I'm hoping that we get an opportunity to speak to the very important people.
And do you think by speaking to them, you'll get the answers, and then the next time we have a conversation, we'll be speaking about something more hopeful?
Look, at this point, so what we have been saying is there's been a lot of talk. So speaking and talking to them is not the problem. Getting them to commit and giving us deadlines, I think that's the biggest challenge that we are facing in Cape Town at the moment. So, I mean, lots of lands were identified as social housing could be built here. You know, golf courses were promised, cited, there'll be surveyors coming on and stuff. And all you get in the end is just delayed tactics. They once did this. Let's do it again just to make sure that this is the amount of houses we can get. And eventually, like, we're sitting at 10 years after the actual promise and there's still nothing that's been done. So I think we're over the talking stage now. I think what we really want to see is some development. Can you please give us deadlines? When do you think you will be putting the first brick on? We would like to be there to witness that in our lifetime, please. So I think we're over the talks now. I think what we need is more action now. We can have as many meetings. I mean, we can meet up everywhere. We can go to every first Thursday of the year. But what we really want is commitment from the Western Cape government to say, yes, we've made these promises and we've marked these lands and we've said this would be possible and is a very possible outcome in the near future, but now this is the date, this is the first one, so we really just want to see more action. We're tired of having conversations, and we're tired of our mayor looking really pretty and like he's a people's person when he doesn't, like, which people are you? People's person, but which people, so we really just want to see deadlines. We really just want to see brick to cement. We really just want Tafelberg to be developed already, and other sites that have been, that were identified as social housing sites. So people are ready we're tired of hearing now. We're ready to see.
Isa, you wanted to come in?
Megan, because as far as I understand it, it's even worse than the situation that you've outlined. It's the fact that the province, who essentially own Tafelberg as opposed to the city, continue to appeal against the original judgment. They have no real desire, no will, no real intention, as far as I can gather, to do anything like build social housing on Tafelberg. They certainly haven't shown that they have any desire at all, as far as I can gather, right?
Yeah, so I mean, so if you look at on paper, so what they said was, yes, there could be social housing here. However, the courts can't kind of dictate to us what to do, etc. So they are appealing the judgment after they had said, like, yes, in court we agree with this. So even when the judgment was handed over, there were certain parts of the judgment that they agreed with, but it's the one of the notions that they're appealing is the fact that the courts can't tell them what to do and when to do it, type of a thing. So I think they are very, like, there are lots of delay tactics. I think they're very good at PR. So what they do is they put up the face that we would like this. This is truly something that we can look at, but they don't actually deliver. So they'll be good with their PR, but their intentions are not what their PR strategy is.
There's a listener who sent in a comment saying, Salam alaikum salam. I know a teacher at Sea Point that is retiring because she says that they are so ill-mannered, and I was shocked. So it don't make sense sending your child from Kailicha to there when the school situation is that of the schools on the Cape Flats. The rest of us don't complain because we would be grateful to have jobs closer to our areas and good schools if the fear is having middle-income people in the CBD. The rest of us don't make life difficult in order to complain. We look for work close by. I personally have been struggling to get work for 4 years with a bachelor's degree. Some people just complain. My mum's aunts who were slaves, descendant of slaves, as well as my mum would have sit or sleep in or on their ba's stoop. But this was what they went through and accepted as God's test, never complained and forced their way. Your thoughts on that, ladies? Megan? Isa?
Okay. So I think the ideal situation would be I think when thinking about it, we just need to take into consideration the history of this country. First of all the Cape Flats were not people's initial choice of occupation or choice of residency, right? There was a system that was built into that, and that system was deliberate. It wasn't that people purposely chose to go and stay in Bonteheuwel, in Kailicha, in all these places where people are living far from opportunities. The CBD wasn't called a CBD for, just for fun. Somebody just woke up and said, CBD. It was intentional. All of it was intentional. So what we're trying to do is not just complain. We're actually actively doing things about it. We are the sale to stop Tafelberg was our initiative, and so I think one of the things is that maybe we might not understand the fight that people are fighting, but for people like myself, it is not fair for somebody who's earning 3 something a month to be taking a taxi that's going to cost them 1.5 just to get to work. Because for me, it feels like the history of this country will never be a first generation wealth of any kind, because all they're constantly working for is hand to mouth, trying to feed themselves. They will never be able to get generational growth. The opportunities that the listener talks about, very true. You will not find business districts within in the Cape Flats or within the townships, and they can blame various reasons for that. But the one true reason is that spatial apartheid was designed so that it could be this way. It was designed that people wouldn't have the prime land. It was designed that people wouldn't be the working class and poor people wouldn't be near where the rich live and glorify themselves, So I think what we're trying to do is not just simply complain. We're trying to make a difference, and we're trying to make you aware that just because this system exists doesn't mean that it's a fair and just system, and that things can be done about it. Affordable accommodation is one of the answers to spatial injustice. District 6 getting their land back was one of those, Tramway, when tramway residents were given back their land, that's another. So I think the most important thing is to understand that the system that we're currently living in wasn't the system that was naturally done. It was designed by the apartheid system.
Another listener saying, Salam. Sorry, as I'll get to you now. Salam, the ideal situation is that we all would love to stay near places of work and opportunities. The problem is the long waiting housing list and little spaces that's left. The housing list and the spaces and housing not being... because the one thing is that it exists and the one thing is that it doesn't exist, and in that existence, the chances of you getting your house is really not really existing. But Isa, you wanted to say something?
Well, I mean, I'll speak to that because the last I looked at it, I think there was a backlog of 400,000 households waiting for homes, and they're certainly not waiting for them in the CBD of Cape Town. I mean, we know that because they're not building them for that, for those people. And, I think, just to add to what Megan was saying, we need to work really hard and with concerted effort to dismantle spatial apartheid. That's really what we need to do. We can't accept a situation where things are pretty much the same as they were pre-94. And the way that the townships were built and the way that people were forcibly removed into these spaces, it was really to destroy families, there was no town planning, no parks, no greenery, none of the things that would make an environment livable. And so it was all about destruction. And what we need to do is start constructing. Subsequent to all of, in this year, I've joined Rise Mzansi, which is a new political movement. And one of our big focuses is spatial apartheid, how we deal with that. But when you come from a civil society background, what you start to realize is that unless you have control over the resources of government, then you have no real power at all. And we have a government at the moment, certainly in this country, and certainly in the city and province, where they choose to go to court. The cost of going to court continuously is massively expensive. Why choose to spend your money that way?
I'd just like us to imagine if we win this fight of spatial injustice, what are we imagining our city would look like? Because it's really hard for me to see it, because it's so deep and it's so hard, it's so difficult. People are tired, people are struggling, and there are many other factors that are now adding to it. So civil society, organizations, what are we seeing when we dismantle the spatial injustice? And then what does it look like when we offer it to the people who are in need and waiting?
It's such a great question. I mean, because we talk about it as if it's this, a big fantasy, and maybe what we should be doing is sitting down and really start to design this. Yeah. I mean, one of the big issues is obviously transport, having effective transport, efficient transport, cheap transport is the way that many cities throughout the world that are thriving, manage to deal with issues of distance. So I don't believe that somebody living in Khayelitsha who wants to continue living in Khayelitsha shouldn't be allowed to, that isn't what we're trying to imagine. It is about choice. And that choice should be easy, it should be accessible, you should have green spaces, you should have great schools, access to education, safety. I mean, what people say again and again and again is they are absolutely petrified for their children, alone at home, that places in the city are not safe. Now, I don't experience that. I feel safe. So
very interesting.
Yeah, and I would love other people who don't feel safe to feel as safe as I do in my flat at night.
Very interesting. I'm just thinking, and this is just off topic, because yesterday we had found out that 2 young men were hijacked and murdered, and it just didn't make sense, and we were all trying, especially as a community trying to figure out like why, because people knew these young men and they were good and they were serving their community and all of that good stuff. And it was like, when you say you don't feel unsafe, I thought of how they thought they could be wherever they were and they were fine. And the question of you can't even question safety because Cape Town is a dangerous city. But there's another comment that came through who says, I can clearly say that 30 years ago there were houses available. However, the number of people have almost doubled in the city, which makes it very difficult. Look what's happening in Boerkap. The rates is very high. So if you are to build social housing, the rates needs to come down, which will never happen, according to this listener. So I know that time, I'm not sure what time we are concluding or how much time we have, but it's almost that time. And I'm just thinking, what are your thoughts on what this listener is saying? And the safety aspect is so big, because when you do, and when we are trying to imagine dismantling, breaking down this social housing, the spatial divide, we want safety when we speak about that, because as you say, we're not saying that people who live in Bonteheuwel, Khayelitsha, Manenberg, Yanga need to move from those spaces. We are saying that you need good spaces, you need good schools, you need clinics, and all of that, and you need to be safe, and you need to feel comfortable, and you should have the freedom to go into another area without having the fear of whatever is labeled with that area. You know what I mean? Because if I live in Mitchell's Plain and I go to Nyanga, I don't want to feel like, oh, I'm in Nyanga, this is not my territory, how am I going to navigate this? Or someone coming from Khayelitsha going to Bonteheuwel, there shouldn't be that. So it's a big one. I don't know if you guys are making notes and how you guys plan to put it down on paper and start working on it. But it seems like a dream for me at this point. But Megan, would you like to jump in there? I know there's a campaign also that you are busy with.
Yes. So at the moment, we are busy as the Reclaim the City. And basically what we're doing is we are designing our ideal city. And this ideal city is including the current occupations that are in this CBD. And so, I think one of the things that Issa said for me that really stood out and resonated with my ideal society is the choice. I should be staying in Khayelitsha by choice.
Yeah.
Not because my financial circumstances don't allow it. I should be staying in Sea Point by choice, and it should be a choice. People shouldn't be excluded because of their income. People shouldn't be excluded because of what they look like. People shouldn't be excluded because of what religion they are, etc. So it's the choice for me. So it's the choice to be able to say, you know what, actually, I love the sea more than I do mountains. So I don't want to stay in Constantia. I want to go and live in Sea Point and be able to do so. And when it comes to the to the question that was raised by, the comment that was raised by the listener, I think one of the things that people really need to take into consideration is, I know that we as young people use the term the system, but gentrification is a real thing. And with gentrification comes rate hikes and all sorts of things. So it's not to say that these things can't be worked out. And even with low cost housing, I mean, we've had spatial designers who've come in and shown that, the city can still make money, property owners could still make money and still take into consideration people who are earning a certain amount and who can't be paying the full, who are not being paid billions of rand and therefore can afford expensive rent. But if we were to integrate everything and work together, the city could still work beautifully. I mean, I've seen it in other countries. I've seen it in countries when we're doing research, and you see how well the system works, where the poor is living with the rich are living with the poor, and how nourished that society is, how there's abundance of opportunities. And it doesn't necessarily mean that those riches or that would just be in the Cape Town CBD, but just, the full Cape Town. We could totally develop and work on the full Cape Town, but taking into consideration people's income and not excluding people because of their race, because of their jobs, because of their religion,
I'm just thinking about you saying that it's First Thursday and you are out and about, because First Thursday in my mind is really a time for young people, university students to go into the CBD and have fun. But you're going to have a conversation with the Premier's office and trying to find out what their plans are on a First Thursday. Doesn't sound too exciting, but it's really hard work. But then I also want to know, as a people, as you are doing this hard work, both of you guys, how can we realize a city, just a city? How can we advocate for change? How do we find faith in what, with the information that you guys have shared with us? How do we find this to be truthful to ourselves, and then jump on this boat and say, okay, this is what we're talking about, this is how I understand it, how do I offer support, how do I go about changing? Isa?
The big thing for me is that there are so many good people with so many great ideas in this city, in this country. The fact that they not in government is sad, but when I hadn't ever met Megan before, but I knew other Reclaim the City people, and I just hear her and I think, oh, I'm so excited, and that's if we can all get together, those of us who envisage a different society, a truly post-apartheid society in this country, and particularly in this very, very divided city, then we can get together. We can put all our minds together, and we've got the skills. We've got the ideas. We can do it. That's what I believe.
Megan?
I totally agree with you, Issa, there. And I think collaboration is one of those things that need to happen. Education. I think it's also very, very important. We cannot... I remember how annoyed I used to be at school when people said, knowledge is power. It's just like, whatever. What kind of power is this? But now that I'm older and I'm realizing education is power, you need to understand where it is that you come from, where it is that you are, and where you are wanting to go, and empower yourself with the right type of education. So educate yourself on how things work systematically. What is gentrification? Get the knowledge so that you can understand how it fits into your life, so that you can understand how it fits into your future plans. I mean, so many of young people have dreams and want to contribute to generational wealth, and what you were saying, that most young people are out on a Thursday in Long Street and just having fun, is there have to be a few that sacrifice themselves so that tomorrow is a bit better for others. Because what I don't want to happen is I don't want the younger generation to be fighting the same fight that I'm fighting. I want them to be able to walk to their workplaces, even if they're doing an internship for 2.5. I want them to have libraries where they can literally walk at 12 o'clock in the middle of the night and still feel safe to go and read a book in a library. I want them to ride bicycles to work because it's safer for the environment. Those are the types of fights that I want them to have, which are different to this one, because I'm having the same fight that Nelson Mandela was having after how many years? So I don't think that's fair to them. So I would happily sacrifice. And I think not all of us are going to get to the promised land, but if most of us can just try to do the little that we can, educate ourselves, go watch these free presentations that are being done, collaborate with other NGOs and other NPOs, go into communities and find and see how people are living. Because I think one of the things that really messes us up is to be in our own space and in our own bubble and not see how your space and how you feel safe and how you are in your community is such a blessing, whereas somebody else, like who's your best friend who lives in a completely different area, how their space is and how they living is. Because I think that would also inspire us to want to do better, to want to do greater.
Are you thinking of politics maybe?
I don't know. I feel like I would just change if I went there. I think there's something with that title that really changes a person. And so I don't think I'd ever join politics, but I think I'll always be an activist for what is right and what is just.
Well, Megan, Isa, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's Yeah, it's one of those conversations that I still have to process for myself, and I want to thank the listeners for participating in this discussion. And as you say, Megan, it's all about education. I was joking the other day that, our parents used to tell us that, education is, the key to freedom and success. And so you're supposed to get money with that education. And then when you get a listener saying, I have a bachelor's degree and for 4 years I've been struggling and all of that. So we really even question our education, but just the power of knowing is what's important. But ladies, until we speak again, have yourselves a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So that was Megan and Isa speaking to us about Tafelberg and what we need to know, and saying that education is power, not really the education part, but having the knowledge gives you the power to at least decide and make that choice. Up next is Reflections with Ayub Ali. There's so much more in store for you on Radio 786 100.4 FM. But from myself and the team, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.